Hi everyone, so welcome back to my channel. Today is another study tips sort of law school video, and I'm just going to go over another way I take notes for a certain type of class. So this type of class is what I like to call lecture PowerPoint and at-home reading. So basically, these types of classes are structured in a way where the professor gives you a set of notes or readings that you have to read before attending each class. And during those classes, he would go over every single part of the reading in a PowerPoint slide and through a verbal lecture. So I brought my old binder out just to show you guys how I organized my notes for this particular class. And as you can see, there were a lot of readings. So these are the printouts of the textbook / whatever documents that our professor required us to read. And this here is entertainment law. And basically, the first page obviously is usually the syllabus. And then let me just show you real quick. I don't know what I can and cannot show you, but I'll just quickly flash this. So it would be the lecture PowerPoint, would be a handout, and then he would give us something like this, readings for lecture number 2. So lecture number 1 was just like an intro lecture, and then on the first day he gave us a handout, which was, I'll show you how large the handouts are for each sitting, and I'll show you how I organized it as time passed. So this, see all of this, the thickness of this page, this is for each class. So this was reading for lecture number 2, and you would have to read this entire document prior to attending lectures. So for the style of this lecture, what I found was most helpful was making notes within the margins of the reading. So what I like to do with these types of lecture styles was, because most of the verbal lecture and the PowerPoints were based exactly on the readings itself. So basically you would have to either add or highlight certain points that the professor would talk about during class. So prior to attending class, obviously I would do other readings, but what I like to do is to highlight some of the key points and kind of try to predict what kind of questions he would ask the class, because sometimes like they would do like cold calling and just like ask you random facts about the case. And yeah, so at first when I started out, I didn't have a set parameter of how I would do this. So this is kind of how the beginning looked like, which was kind of like this. See, I had some highlighted sections on the key points. So usually the key points that I would like to highlight were either key facts, or the first thing that you want to look out for, then the issue, the key issue, the question of the case that the judge and the attorneys are trying to figure out, and then obviously finally usually it's in the end of the paragraph, but take out, oh sorry, I'm just gonna silent my phone. Take out the key analysis of the reason for why they choose a certain type of law to solve that issue, and then obviously the final last, usually it's at the end of the case, it's the rules, the legal rules, the main meat of the legal issue. I would highlight that, the rules of why they decided the case this way or that way. And then usually there may be a dissenting judgment, which is like something like one person who goes against the majority rule. So then you want to highlight that as well. And then obviously the conclusion. So that's how I kind of started with this sort of filing system, which is I would kind of highlight those key points with a yellow highlighter, and then let me just show you one page. And then in the margins, some of the main arguments that either whichever side of the either the appellant or like whatever, like what the arguments were. So I would just write argues and then do a summary quotation. So I would do like kind of a paraphrase of what arguments they made, so I would know exactly what they were talking about. So I kept doing that, and then during the lectures, I decided to start inserting a page, which looks like this, just a line sheet, and I would write in it lecture 3 or whatever, and then what additional facts or main issue, rule, fact, and result the professor talked about in a separate little sheet. I found this to not be the best way of filing, but obviously this is one way you can do that. So when I started getting even more into it, as you can see, I always write in the margin of all the readings. So this one was, what did I write? Reason for the decision, and then just kind of like highlighted everything. So as I was getting more into the course and the class, my notes started taking kind of a uniform approach. So what I mean by the uniform approach is this. I would kind of sort of summarize every paragraph on the side in the margins of what that main paragraph, main issue of each paragraph was talking about, because it's not always a case, but like sometimes it is, and sometimes there's like a lot of facts and a lot of laws. But for example, after I did that for a while, my notes started to look really basically like a summary. I would have a summary of everything in the margins, and then I started to alternate instead of using a sheet of paper to further discuss what the professor was saying. I started hitting all the points that the professor spoke about in class, so I didn't need to rewrite it, because I kind of like build up this way of kind of pre-reading and gathering those points that he did discuss in class. But for those rare moments where he did add on something, I would use a different color pen to kind of highlight those points. So I'm trying to find a good page that is filled with what I'm kind of talking about. Okay, so for example here, the black text right here at the top, that's my analysis. And then when the professor would further elaborate on that particular paragraph of the case or have something important, I would put that, I would write that in, handwrite that in the margins during class in another color, which looked like this. So that's how I organized my notes for this type of class. And then at the end of the semester, how I studied for the final exam and created notes for the final exam was I created a final Word document. And because I did the readings for every single week and really engaged in this course, I pretty much already memorized all the cases, and that's only for me. But like for some people, they're really bad at memorization, so then you need a set of notes. So I did that as well, just as a security blanket and because I had extra time. So basically what I did was I did an IRAC chart. So I created the issue, rule, analysis, conclusion chart for every single one of the cases discussed in this course. And I decided to use that formatting for notes because this particular course was very, very case heavy. And most of the law that we were taught and discussed were based on particular cases. So you really had to know the cases in and out to be able to refer to the case itself and to distinguish that case from the problems on the exam. And also you needed to really know how the law was applied with those specific facts and how you can use that same type of law to apply to the specific facts in the problems in the exam. So you really need to know exactly what case you're talking about and what issue, what rule, and what law was being discussed in that particular fact pattern. So how I did that was I created the main chart thing and put it in a full binder. I don't know exactly where I put that chart. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in soft copy on my laptop. If I can find it, I will put a little photo here of a screenshot. But if I can't, then I'll just, I don't know, you guys can kind of basically figure out what I'm trying to say. It's just like literally a chart, an Excel, well, not even an Excel, like a chart on Microsoft Word. So I would create that, and because I wrote all the main issue, rule, point, and conclusion in the margins of every single case, instead of having to go through a thick pile of notes and cases, I would just read the margins and create point form bullet points within the chart based on what I wrote in the margins and based on what I added on with the other color pen. That was what the professor had to say about the particular case. So that's how I made my notes for a course that is heavily relied on pre-class readings, and that relied on in-class PowerPoints with further discussion. So that's how I kind of organized my notes. So yeah, basically every time I would go to the lecture with the document that was the prior readings from the class before. So I would bring that in, the physical copy, and then I would take that back and file it into this binder that I was showing you guys right here, this binder. And then I would also take home the new readings, do the highlighting, the annotations for all the readings, and then attend the next class, and then go back, put it in my binder, back and forth until I ended up with something like this. And I made sure to keep on top of the pre-class readings and annotate all the margins, because that really helps in the end to organize the final notes for your exam. So that's what I would recommend to do. And because it's kind of like a course that is very engaging, at the end of the semester, I really didn't have to put that much time and effort to memorize a lot of the points in the case files, because I already pretty much memorized the facts and the key points. And the only thing that I had to just brush up on was case names and maybe like the statutes, what statutes applied. And we also did learned a dual jurisdiction. So we learned about the New York law and also California law. So that's what I had to kind of refresh myself with. But other than that, all the like content and all the main facts was already kind of absorbed in my head. And also it was easily filed in my little, well, not little, this is kind of massive, in this massive binder that I reduced into a small, again, condensed version at the end of the year with the chart system. So yeah, that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little explanation of how I organize my notes for courses that rely heavily on reading. So I don't know, like pre-class reading courses. I think I'll name this video. So yeah, I hope you guys learned something from this and was able to, I don't know, take as much and as little useful information from this video as possible with your studying organizational schedule. And yeah, so I'll probably film a few more videos talking about a different type of system, but since this video is already 13 minutes, I'm probably going to separate them into 2 videos. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one.